I used to respect Iger a lot. I mean, I used to be a big time Bob Iger fan, and since he's left, I've started to really my opinion on him has changed quite a bit. The way he handled the transition was really, really shitty. The way he threw Chapek under the bus, and he did, right before he knew things were going to go down with the pandemic, he is like, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm out of here. And all these leaks out of the, from the Hollywood trades and the hit pieces. If you don't believe Iger had nothing to, if you don't believe Iger had anything to do with that, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but people at home, I'm telling you that there's something there with this. This guy has undermined Chapek from day one. And that's what really turned me off to him, because it seems like Iger is more about Bob Iger than he is about the Walt Disney Company. And I used to stand up for Iger quite a bit. And I'm starting to see some true colors here. I don't think he cares about Disney at all. If you cared about Disney, you wouldn't have thrown Bob Chapek under the bus. Not because he has to care about Bob Chapek, but Bob Chapek is literally piloting your plane. You want the guy to have all the tools he needs, right? I mean, you're in a plane with the pilot. You want the pilot to have everything he needs to land safely. And Bob Iger said, you know what, Bob Chapek? We don't care. I'm going to throw you under the bus and sink or swim, buddy. That doesn't show me a guy who cares about the Walt Disney Company. That shows to me a guy who is concerned about his legacy and wants to make sure the next guy doesn't outshine him.
And you know what? I honestly think that if Iger did truly care about the Walt Disney Company, not only would he have never thrown Bob Chapek under the bus in the first place, but he would have resigned 8 years earlier. He wouldn't have listened to the board. That was 100%. The only reason he stayed as long as he did, just to enhance his own image.
I mean, look, I had heard before about how Iger had wanted to leave on the high. He wanted to leave at the top. I remember hearing about his departure plans after the opening. Oh no, sometimes that happens. But I remember hearing about his departure plans when it came to after Shanghai Disneyland opened. It's like, oh, I'm going to leave, after 2016, after this thing opens, and I'm going to leave on top and that kind of thing. And it's like, I mean, it's an interesting idea that you leave at this kind of high point, but why is that why is it a factor kind of thing, if not for image? And OG, I think you've made one of the best points I've ever heard on this, which is, Iger couldn't take the loss when it came to 20th Century Fox, know, and when you told me this, it really kind of stuck, because it's like, oh my gosh, that was definitely the reason why, the company would even pursue a almost double valuation from their original offer for 20th Century Fox. I understand, Comcast had a lot to do with that, but it was like he couldn't. I think you're right. I think he couldn't take the loss. He couldn't imagine himself being on the losing end, especially when he was about to exit. And now, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars that the company's now in debt in. We have rising interest rates now, which has put them in kind of a crunch time type situation, and saddled Chapek with this kind of debt that he now has to mitigate. I mean, it was not the best way to leave the company, but for Iger's image, oh yeah, I mean, that's exactly the state I leave it in, just to make myself look better. And, we'll have the other guy pick up the pieces of my actions. It was totally outrageous, and I think you're right, OG. I think that's motivated by more his image than anything else.
Yeah, he knew he was retiring, and he couldn't go out on a note that the last acquisition attempt was a failure. So he was going to get Fox, whether he had to overpay for it or not. Disney be damned. He didn't care. His legacy was on the line there, and he was going to get it. And that's why it's crazy. $70 billion for Fox. For what? Because you got the Simpsons on Disney Plus and you got the X-Men? It's ridiculous.
Oh, don't worry. We got Avatar 2 coming out. So there's that. Look, it is an interesting point. You're talking $70 billion, an astounding amount of money. Think about where $70 billion could go, okay? And to put that money into perspective, I mean, you're talking Shanghai Disneyland was built for like what, anywhere between 5 to 8 billion. 70 is an astronomical figure that the company is probably going to have to be paying back. And again, with rising interest rates, by the way. So, you know, that's not a place where I want to be. But that's probably going to have to be paid back, over maybe 2 decades?
Right.
You know, I mean, that's what we're talking here. And it's an unfathomable amount of cash. And it was all, I think, like you said, OG, like you told me, I think it was all because of his image. He just couldn't let it go. He just had to snag that last whale before he left. And it's interesting. A lot of people cite, oh, yeah, Iger was a success for Pixar, the Pixar acquisition, success for the Lucasfilm acquisition and Marvel and stuff like that. But nobody ever really talks about 20th Century Fox because even they know that it wasn't worth this unbelievable amount. And that actually, you know, begs the question, you know, was it, you know, did Rupert Murdoch and his association with him have anything to do with it, and, you know, any improprieties there? And it's just, like you said, for The Simpsons, for Avatar, it wasn't at all worth any of that amount. I was uncomfortable with the purchase before, when it was originally valued at, it's like what, around $30 billion ish figure. I was like, that's an astounding amount of money. And even when you look at company assets and what the company is worth, that's an unbelievable figure. And then they paid more than that. I mean, almost twice as much. He put the company in a very, very dim position, and that was before the events of 2020. Remember, he signed off. You know, you know, as OG brings up early in the show here, he signs off right before, you know, the whole world implodes, and knew what would happen as well because he had seen it with Shanghai Disneyland. You know, his deluxe resort, and, you know, the deals that he made with China to get that thing going. I mean, that's probably a whole book on itself, and one of the reasons why I'm not so high on Iger, even before his latest moves concerning Fox and everything else. But he knew this was coming, and yet he was like, yep, there you go, Chapek. Here's, like, you know, billions of dollars of debt, and by the way, all your all the ways of that the company makes money, you know, with the theater business, studio business, and all that, that's all going to be shut down. So good luck. You know, it was totally outrageous.
No, it is, and that's why I'm not really that hard on Bob Chapek. I know it's like the popular, it's fashionable amongst the Disney community to, like, you know, bald man bad, you know. But the dude got Disney through the pandemic and the lockdowns pretty much unscathed. I mean, they didn't have to sell off parts of the company. They didn't have to sell off the entire company. It wasn't broken up into pieces. The dude came out of this looking pretty decent. I know the stock price, but it's not the end of the world right now because everyone's stock price is lower. It wasn't that bad. He handled it pretty well, actually. Surprisingly, I mean, he really did.
Sector 2. Malfunction in Sector 2. All droids will be shut down for reloading of labor programs. Stand by for power disconnect.